For your time, I'll introduce our first speaker, Tristan Simpson, who will be talking about communities and light pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. All right, so unfortunately I've already misled you. My talk is actually going to be more about legislation, so sorry about that, but I think the title still holds. My name is Tristan Simpson. I work for the Western Australian Government for the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions within the Marine Science Program. We love our acronyms there, so I'll spare you from that. Hello. Okay. All right, so I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of where we are meeting, as also where we work, and pay my respects to the emerging, the elders, past, present, and emerging. But this is one of the main programs that I work on, which is the Northwest Shelf Flatback Turtle Conservation Program. This was formed due to the Gorgon gas development that is on Barrow Island. This is a Class A reserve, and the project has a 60-year time frame, which is, we also have $60 million worth of funding over that time frame. So it's very large scale, but it's due to the lifespan of this mining development. And it's right smack bang in the middle of a significant flatback turtle nesting habitat. Okay. As it's formed under legislation, we have legislative objectives, and it's mostly to conserve and protect flatback turtles. We have mechanisms that we're able to do, which includes research, monitoring, mitigation of threats, as well as communication and education. We also have an advisory committee, an independent chair, an experts panel, and my role mostly inside of this program is mitigation of threats. So the flatback turtle is endemic to Australia. It's largely across northern Australia, and within that species there are around 7 management groups, also genetic populations. The Northwest Shelf flatback turtle nests along that Pilbara coastline, that little highlighted area down that sort of northwestern part of Australia. So that's from Exmouth Gulf up to Port Hedland, and includes the adjacent islands offshore as well. But its inwater distribution extends all the way up along the Pilbara coastline, Kimberley coastline, towards the NT border. So this is where we work, our focus of our project. But this is why we're here. Let there be light. All animals, as we heard yesterday, evolve through diurnal patterns, night and day, dawn and dusk. I already forget the term for dawn and dusk animals, but I'm sure, is that person here? There you go, corpuscular. So since the 1800s, light has proliferated. It's grown with populations, with city centres, regional towns, etc. And it's really formed a staple of human activities at night. But humans can adapt, we can evolve, we can create our own dark spaces. We can have blockout blinds, we can put even, eye patches over, blinds, masks over our eyes. Oh, we can have blue light filters on our electronic devices. But animals don't have that luxury. They're stuck in a habitat that we create for them in the external environment. So why am I here? As I pointed out, the Northwest Shelf flatback turtle nests across that Pilbara coastline. As you can see, there's quite a large amount of light in that area. And for a remote regional area, that's quite significant. If you look at all of Western Australia as a whole, that Pilbara coastline is quite densely populated with light. And this is just an example of one of those centres. This is Port Hedland, and this is the port of Port Hedland. You can see there's quite a lot of excess. It's a lot of industry. This is the largest iron ore exporting facility in almost the world. I believe it's one of the largest in the world. And you can see there's a lot of excess there. In that bottom photo there is actually a nesting beach directly in front of those lights at the base. So this is just one example. But unfortunately, it's not alone. There is industrial development across that entire coastline that is supported by those regional towns. So we have everything from iron ore, LNG, fertiliser plants, we have significant oil production, shipping, and it's not stopping. Development across the Pilbara coastline is progressing. There are always new developments that are coming, which means more artificial light. And unfortunately, the Northwest Shelf flatback turtle nests along this area, and 50% of that population nests within the Dampier archipelago. So, turtles have lots of threats, but artificial light has continuously been prioritised through our threat prioritisation process as a high priority. For adult nesters, it can deter them from optimal nesting beaches to stop them from nesting on that nesting beach they might have been going there for hundreds, thousands of years. But for hatchlings, it causes misorientation and disorientation. So they might either get attracted by the light or lost within the light. This may result in increased mortality from issues such as predation, heat, exhaustion, or just trapped in infrastructure where they can't get to the ocean where they need to get to. But as we heard yesterday, I don't need to go into any detail. Obviously, it's more than just turtles. We've already heard impacts from people and other wildlife. This is one of the key messages that I really want to impart, that we now know better, so we have to do better. We've learnt many lessons over the course of our history. Biosecurity is one, invasive species. You look at even domestic animals, cats or dogs. We now require spaying or neutering of animals so they don't cause an issue in the environment. I think this is a sort of similar message that we need to sort of impart here. We have to do better. There is excess in the world and balance needs to be restored. I fully respect that artificial light needs to be there to support our activities at night, but there is excess and we really need to consider and question that. So our role in light pollution management, we've conducted a lot of research, we do a lot of communication and education, but in terms of the mitigation space or the management space, it's largely advice. It's mostly because infrastructure is controlled by development approvals. So we don't have control over that within our program, but we do provide advice to those people that do have legislative responsibility. But this highlights our need for successful stakeholder collaboration. So we have to work with partners that have that responsibility to get improved outcomes. I just want to give a shout out to this document. This was really a game changer. It was developed before I started in my position, so in 2020. It really opened doors and avenues to actually progress outcomes in this space, particularly under legislation. But what I did, this was a fun task that I did. I reviewed all this legislation and subsidiary legislation. I reviewed every single document that was relevant to marine turtle threats, which was hundreds of documents, thousands of pages to form this other document. I did this to identify opportunities, gaps and barriers for marine turtle conservation. Where could we get improved outcomes? And obviously with artificial light being one of the priority threats, this was one of the targets of my review. I also went out to each of the regional centres, identified different stakeholders. I've talked to everybody, those that are responsible for implementing that legislation to better understand the processes, but also all the different parties that might contribute to light pollution and different threats. I also spoke to numerous lighting companies, lighting designers and developers, suppliers as well. I literally spoke to anyone and everyone that I possibly could, not just in this regional town, but every regional town across the Pilbara and Kimberley coastline. I did a lot of talking. So I'm just going to supply just a few examples of this application underneath legislation. So the Environmental Protection Act, there's a Part 4 called Environmental Impact Assessments for Significant Developments. One of the primary outcomes that we've achieved through this is that every significant development that may have an impact to marine turtles has to align itself to the National Light Pollution Guidelines for wildlife. Now, in terms of this achievement, it's collective across every stakeholder that's represented across the bottom here. The representatives here are consultancies of lighting developing companies or lighting designers. But my role was mostly working with the Environmental Management Branch as well as DWER to create awareness, information, as well as collegiality between us to review these environmental impact assessments. So that's part of my role. I review those impact assessments to provide advice to those groups that are responsible for delivering this outcome. All right, this is a little-known piece of legislation in Western Australia. It has numerous benefits because not every development goes through an EPBC MNES approval, so matters of national environmental significance, or through an environmental impact assessment. It's not considered significant. This has a benefit because it looks at the individual. It does not look at the species as a whole or a population. If one threatened species is taken or disturbed, it requires a Section 40 authorisation. This is completely controlled by our department, and it allows us to get additional conditions in. And so a lot of the conditions that we put in are alignment to the National Light Pollution Guidelines for Wildlife. Now, under this, under this one, we understand that some smaller developments cannot complete the EIA processes underneath the National Light Pollution Guidelines. With those groups, that's like capacity, resources, funding. They can't do baseline assessments, light management plans, etc. So what we do is we focus on the principles and we work with them to identify and mitigate problem lighting. So this is actually an outcome from one of those developments. You can see there we've got some really good low-level lighting across that foreshore area. Cool. Now this one we have very little to do. This guides the development for all across Western Australia, state planning framework. But there's a common goal inside this planning document. They're required to look after threatened species and their habitat. So that gives us a leverage point to work with, and we actually have a DBCA land use planning team inside of our department who works with local governments on specific developments. We've achieved some really good outcomes with this. I've listed them here. I don't really want to go through them individually, but essentially a lot of local governments across the north are actively consulting with the department to get better environmental outcomes, including reduced light pollution. I can regularly work with different councils from Exmouth to Onslow, Karratha, Port Hedland, Broome, and we provide lots of advice to these groups to help get better environmental outcomes, and even to the point where we're being written into their local planning schemes and strategies to actually provide that advice. It's become a legislative mandate underneath their policy. So we're getting, again, improved outcomes from it. This was a very easy one. So when I was completing legislation policy review, I met with the port authorities, and they were actually reviewing their development guidelines. They asked me to draft up some content. I provided to them for consideration, and now underneath their development guidelines, they recognise artificial light as an impact to wildlife, and they require any new light or modification of existing light to align to the National Light Pollution Guidelines for Wildlife. So this was a really easy outcome, and I was very happy for this one. Barely had to work for that one. It was great. Very supportive. And obviously, first off, I just want to give a shout out to Carol. Now, she's here in the audience too. This has been a years-long process, like years. I was first started when I was working through the regional towns, obviously identifying street light as one of the potential impacts for marine turtles. Followed the trail to who's responsible for street lights in the state. For this one here, we were given an impossible task to get majority support from all local governments across the state. We developed up a flyer. We met with local governments. We worked with WOLGA, the Western Australia Local Government Authority. Anyway, yeah, so we met with them, and we weren't getting much traction. But one of the side benefits of this one was that when the Western Power completed an independent review with local governments for their public lighting assessment management strategy, they all stated they wanted dark sky lights as well as smart lights inside their communities. So now Western Power is progressing development of a model that is more dark sky friendly, that can be applied to all street lights across the state, obviously with consideration from local governments. So this was a really good outcome. It literally only happened 2 weeks ago, so we're very happy about that. We have a great communication staff member. She's a gun. She goes out to multiple festivals across all of Northern Australia and in Perth. We get school kids out to monitoring beaches that we work on. She's developed curriculum-aligned classes, and we go out and give public talk events as well. So light pollution is obviously one of those topics that we talk about across every single avenue that we do, but the one in the centre here that I want to highlight is a collaboration with SciTech that we're working on. This includes with Carol and with DQ. This is going to be a large interactive display to demonstrate the impacts of light pollution on marine turtles, and they get around 350,000 people per year through this, through their doors. So this is a really great outcome for us as well. This is more just a statement because I feel like it hasn't been represented too much as well. I've spoken with probably over 40 different lighting companies, and I've always been, vastly been impressed by what they say and what they are capable of. There is such capacity there, and also a desire. I've spoken to lighting designers that are tinkering in their garage to create better lights. There is such a desire there to do it, and from what I've learned, most lighting companies can do almost anything. They just need to be asked to do it. So I just want to make sure that's a clear message too. And because it's a key message piece, this is my other one. A lot of people reference this as webs. For me, it's a puzzle because you've got to put all those pieces of the puzzle together to get those outcomes. Everyone has a responsibility under this. Everyone contributes. Everyone has I suppose, a stake in this, in reducing light pollution. So part of my job has been to identify those pieces of the puzzle and get them working together. And it's been a very it's been a very positive journey. But there are issues. There's existing light. For me, one of the biggest ones is not sharing the outcomes. Lighting designers might develop the best lighting plan for a specific structure, but never hear about the ecological outcomes. What were the biological outcomes? Did they achieve the intended effect of actually reducing impact to bats or to turtles? But also inconsistent or inadequate methods, changing behaviour, but another big one that I think is the knowledge of clients. So the people that actually go out, so if they get a mandate to put out, what's that hated term, wildlife-friendly lights, they actually give that to the contractor, and then they say, I want wildlife-friendly lights. There's no specific guidance about what constitutes a wildlife-friendly light outside the National Light Pollution Guidelines, which are broad, specific application. They're a good start, but more lessons need to be learned and shared across the board to get effective outcomes. And yeah, there are ineffective products out there, cheap imports as well, that don't necessarily achieve the targets that are needed for the light pollution in that specific area. But I'm happy to talk about these tomorrow in the panel and such. No worries. That's my last slide anyway.
Thank you, Tristan. Do we have questions? Whoops, over there.
It's okay, you can yell it out.
All good. One job. Actually, Marnie's got so many jobs, no criticism. Tristan, thank you. That was a great talk. And it's obviously a major success story. One of the things that is a slight bugbear as someone who doesn't work on turtles is that you talk about biodiversity, and how much of this do you think translates, and how much impact is this having on biodiversity? You said that one of the things for you is that we don't measure impact. As part of this, is there any chance that biodiversity will also be incorporated beyond just the incredible job that you're doing with the turtles?
It is one of my bugs to bear, because in my world it's largely just turtles, 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 and because that's obviously my job. When advice comes from like across my desk as a request, it is something that I say, well, there are multiple species here that will be impacted. That does go back again towards that client-based knowledge too, and also the consultants-based knowledge. One of the first things they have to do underneath an EIA is to identify the species that are, Adam went through a little bit of this yesterday. They have to identify what species, and through that they're supposed to complete a risk assessment as to what might impact each of those. So from my end, it is a bit of an issue that turtles are the primary consideration. I'm glad they are, because that does have flow-on effects for things like seabirds as well. But then other species are largely omitted. But it is something that's progressing. I think I heard that bats are increasingly becoming involved in those considerations for it. But yeah, biodiversity should be considered, yes.
Yeah, no, I'd be very happy to help. So just to put that into context, and part of the reason I was Googling while you were doing it, we have 500 plus threatened species, which is a lot. We have over 300,000 animal species in Australia, so we're really only concentrating on a small group of them.
And that's why that Biodiversity Conservation Act is so important, because it protects that individual. Obviously, there's sometimes limitations into how it can be applied, but having good working relationships with those that are actually delivering that is addressing a lot of those issues and gaps.
Thanks very much for the talk, Tristan, and you're an ace campaigner. Well done. And I say that as a former campaigner, so it's really good work that you've done. So, and speaking of which, in your stakeholder analysis and your dealings with stakeholders, how much involvement and to what extent were they a help or a hindrance or even aware were the local NGOs, so Cons Council through to local community conservation groups? Were they in the way? Were they a help? Were they aware? Did you have a job to do to bring them along?
So WA is almost void of NGOs. It is a bit of a shame, you know, compared to the eastern states. There's almost none. There are a few, like for example in Port Hedland there's a great community group called Care for Hedland. They're advocates and they'll blow the whistle on anything that happens, you know, in that area. But unfortunately WA almost has none. I wish there were more NGOs, because working for the government you can only say and do so much. However, NGOs do not have that filter. And so there are obviously more activist groups for some developments, but yeah, I wish there was more. But then in terms of working with stakeholders, it's a journey for each. Some of them have been very aware and want to get better outcomes. Others, it takes years to get that traction. So it's been a journey for each, and each one has pros and cons. But you can't expect change overnight. You just got to keep on chipping away at it, and then celebrate the wins. And just if you don't get a win, just go, okay, well, next conversation. So, yeah.
Hi, Tristan, it's Sharon over here. Thank you, that was absolutely wonderful. Do you think that there's a way that, say, for example, turtles could be seen as icon species in your part of the world where you're working, but other animals could be seen as icon species in other places, and if you were to concentrate on increasing the success like you're doing with icon species, that would then provide habitat for a whole other range of species. So you concentrate on just the one, but in doing so you're providing benefits for hundreds, thousands others. Do you think that is an approach that could be valuable?
Oh yeah, that's been done for ages. There's always indicator species that tug at the heartstrings of the general population. So turtles being one of them, it might be dolphins, could be whatever it might sort of be, a specific wallaby. So of course, they're indicator species. I think they were talked about yesterday. Like microbats are largely left out because hardly anyone sees them. And if you do see them, it's a little flutter in front of your face that lasts like half a second. So, it's like an animal that needs to be connected with. Personally, I love microbats. I think they're a fantastic animal. I say that genuinely. I love seeing them. I go out at night to try to find them. But, yes, I do think that is an approach. But I also have to say that there's still a lot to do, from this end. Like you saw the existing light that's there, that is across our area. Like it is something that is hard to change, and changing behaviour is one thing, but then also timing is another one. If there are issue lights, you've got to try to time it when they're retrofitting lights across their entire area and really hit home what should be applied to it. There are legislative levers that we can use to force change, but they are harder to implement. And they require a lot of justification and effort to get that across the line. So using those little indicator species to tug the community heartstrings, yes, it can achieve that outcome.
Thank you, Tristan. Please join me in thanking Tristan again.